Hello again. This is Professor Marsh, and this is the lecture presentation for Unit 12 in Principles of Management, Newberry College, Fall 2021. I'm Professor Marsh. This is a re-record of Unit 12 to fix the problem with the microphone. Unit 12 is Chapter 12 in both editions of the textbook. Except for a couple of photographs and examples, they're identical. In the 10th edition, this chapter is labeled Leadership and Trust, and in the 11th edition, the chapter is labeled Understanding Leadership. So in Unit 12, we have some learning objectives. The first is to define and to demonstrate an understanding of leader and leadership. Then we'll look at the early leadership theories from the 1940s, maybe even earlier than that, through about the 1960s. Then four major contingency leadership theories and modern views on leadership. And then we'll complete the unit with a discussion of trust as the essence of leadership. This is another short but very important chapter about a key management skill. How do you lead workers? How has our view of business leaders changed over time? And what is trust? What role does it play in leadership? Leadership, let's take a look at some of these definitions. A leader is someone who can influence others and who has managerial authority. Leadership is the process of leading a group and influencing that group to achieve its goals. And all managers should also be leaders. But leadership is a quality, it's a personality trait that can be taught and developed further even in those workers who aren't currently managers. So if you go back to our first short exercise, Steve Jobs, Will Smith, and Oprah Winfrey were all examples of leaders. Some of you told me that you might want to work for one of them or another. And what leadership traits and behaviors do they demonstrate, and what types of leadership skills do they have? I think all three of them you identified as people who were very charismatic leaders, and definitely people who are able to influence others in a very strong manner. Note that historically a lot of leadership work done in colleges and universities academically didn't come from Hollywood or New York City or even Silicon Valley. It came from Ohio State and Michigan universities, right in the industrial heartland of the Midwestern United States. Manufacturing needs great leaders just as much as entertainment or high-tech companies do too. All organizations need leaders and people who can inspire others to reach the goals of the organization. So early theories of leadership, this is section 12-2. This was based on traits and behaviors, identifying certain traits of leaders and certain behaviors. And so the traits, theories of leadership that predominated the discussion of leadership in an academic sense in the 1940s through the early 1960s. These were theories that isolate characteristics or traits that differentiate leaders from non-leaders. And these were, you can see the list on Exhibit 12-1, drive, desire to lead, honesty and integrity, self-confidence, intelligence, job-relevant knowledge, extroversion as opposed to introversion, and proneness to guilt. In other words, people who feel guilty if they don't get their things done. And guilt is a great motivator, as I'm sure many students know. Traits alone were not predictive of leadership, and not all leaders have these traits. Not everyone with these traits are leaders. So these theories of leadership eventually were discarded, and also there was a school that identified behavioral theories of leadership, theories that isolate behaviors that differentiate leaders or good leaders from ineffective leaders. And again, there was a lot of work done at Midwestern universities during the time in which the United States was the manufacturing leader of the world in the 50s and 60s. That changed in the 1970s with the emergence of Germany and France and certainly the Far East, Japan in particular, as manufacturing leaders. But at the University of Iowa, uh, they uh, they had a behavioral theory based on democratic versus autocratic or laissez-faire styles. At the Ohio State University, they looked at dynamics such as consideration or initiating behaviors. The University of Michigan, employee-oriented leaders versus production-oriented leaders, and who got better results. And then there was a managerial grid as sort of an integrative theory of leadership,